Look in the mirror. Your small, fragile jaw is a biological embarrassment. You cannot bite through rawhide nor chew tough raw meat without your muscles aching. Compared to a saber-toothed cat, your mouth is completely helpless. Yet 1.8 million years ago, that shrinking jaw was humanity's greatest evolutionary gamble. The moment our ancestors stopped using their mouths as stone crushers, they unlocked the precise metabolic energy required to fuel the human brain. But this thermal revolution claimed an unexpected victim hidden deep within your own anatomy. And the perpetrator is sitting on your dinner plate tonight. To understand why your ancestors were trapped in a biological nightmare before the discovery of fire, you must look at the brutal energy arithmetic of raw survival. Imagine spending more than half of your waking life doing nothing but chewing. That was not a lifestyle choice. It was an inescapable sentence imposed by basic physics and physiology. Chimpanzees and early hominids like Australopithecus spent between 6 to 8 hours every single day grinding raw vegetation, tough roots, and tough raw animal carcasses. Their massive, heavy jawbones and giant molar teeth were built like biological stone crushers, designed specifically to break down rigid plant cell walls and tear through raw muscle fibers. Consider species like Paranthropus boisei, famously dubbed Nutcracker Man by paleoanthropologists. To crush tough, fibrous, raw food, evolution gifted them a massive bony ridge running along the top of their skull, known as a sagittal crest. This crest served as an anchor for colossal temporal chewing muscles that could crush raw nuts and fibrous tubers. Their molar teeth were nearly 4 times the size of yours, coated in thick enamel built for crushing stone-cold raw vegetation. Yet despite these absurd biological investments in raw food processing, Nutcracker Man went extinct. Having big teeth and giant jaw muscles was an evolutionary dead end because it locked them in a biological energy bottleneck. The agonizing physical labor of chewing was only the first stage of their energy crisis. Once raw food entered the stomach, it demanded a staggering amount of metabolic energy to digest. Raw plant starches are locked inside rigid, crystalline structures that digestive enzymes cannot easily break down. Raw meat contains dense, tightly bound collagen fibers that require intense gastric acid production and hours of churning in an oversized gastrointestinal tract. Every hour spent digesting raw food was an hour of intense internal metabolic strain, drawing energy away from every other biological system in the hominid body. Furthermore, raw plant tissues contain chemical landmines, anti-nutrients like tannins, phytates, and cyanogenic glycosides that actively block nutrient absorption and cause chronic digestive inflammation. Early hominids were forced to ingest enormous volumes of raw plant mass just to extract a minimum threshold of usable energy, keeping them in a perpetual state of digestive distress, exhaustion, and physical vulnerability. Because digestion is an immense metabolic energy sink, early hominids were locked in a permanent energy deficit. Their bodies were burning almost all their daily calories just trying to digest the very food required to keep them alive. There was simply no metabolic surplus left over. Their brains remained small, strictly constrained by a biological energy ceiling. In the unforgiving ecosystem of the Pleistocene, if a species cannot extract high-value energy efficiently, it remains an animal, hunted by apex predators, bound by instinct, and living on the constant edge of starvation. To break through this biological ceiling, evolution required a miracle. Everything changed when early humans mastered the spark. When primatologist and anthropologist Richard Wrangham from Harvard University analyzed the sudden evolutionary jump from Australopithecus to Homo erectus approximately 1.8 million years ago, he uncovered a radical truth. The invention of cooking was not merely a culinary upgrade, it was an externalized digestive system. Applying heat to food causes 2 transformative chemical reactions: gelatinization of starches and denaturation of proteins. From a biochemical standpoint, heat triggers the Maillard reaction, a chemical interaction between amino acids and reducing sugars that produces the irresistible aroma of seared meat and roasted crusts. This reaction is not just culinary magic, it is an evolutionary trap. The alluring scent of brown food signaled to our Pleistocene ancestors that toxic plant proteins had been neutralized, and hard-to-digest collagen had been converted into pure, bioavailable energy. Your mouth waters at the smell of barbecue today because your brain is still executing an ancient survival program. When you cook raw plant tissue, heat breaks down rigid cellulose cell walls and melts tight crystalline starch granules into a soft, easily absorbable gel. When you expose raw meat to thermal energy, tight collagen fibers unravel and tenderize, allowing digestive enzymes to disassemble proteins instantly with minimal effort. Heat also triggers the Maillard reaction, a complex chemical dance between amino acids and reducing sugars that creates hundreds of new flavor compounds while making proteins vastly more bioavailable. Cooking effectively performs the hardest work of digestion outside the physical body. By processing raw tissue over thermal embers before it ever reaches the lips, early humans effectively outsourced the energetic cost of digestion to the fire pit. Suddenly, Homo erectus did not need to spend 8 hours a day chewing. Their required chewing time dropped drastically to less than 1 hour per day. Fire became humanity's first cosmetic surgeon and personal chef combined. Over successive generations, the massive, heavy jaws and giant molar teeth that defined early hominids began to shrink. The heavy facial bones and thick skull crests that anchored massive chewing muscles collapsed into the flatter, more refined facial features we possess today. The massive sagittal crest vanished from the fossil record because humans no longer needed a jaw that could crush rocks. In reality, fire acted as humanity's very first personal trainer and plastic surgeon. Before cooking, hominids had to carry around a massive, protruding abdominal barrel just to house meters of fermenting intestines. If you have ever wondered why modern humans have a flatter stomach compared to a gorilla, you can thank thermal processing. Cooking performed the heavy digestive work outside the body, allowing our ancestors to trade a bloated, high-maintenance gut for a sleek torso and a high-powered brain. Archaeological sites across the globe offer compelling physical evidence of this ancient thermal revolution. At Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, researchers unearthed burnt bones and ash deposits dating back 1 million years, confirming that hominids were intentionally manipulating fire inside sheltered caverns. At Gesher Benot Yaakov in Israel, hearth structures dating to nearly 780,000 years ago reveal organized cooking areas where early humans systematically roasted nuts, seeds, and megafauna meat. At Zhoukoudian in China, thick layers of ash and charred animal bones demonstrate that Homo erectus maintained controlled hearths across vast geographic regions. The thermal manipulation of food was not an isolated event. It was a sweeping technological paradigm shift that redefined human ecology. Furthermore, thermal processing destroyed anti-nutritional factors present in many wild tubers and legumes. Plants evolve chemical defenses such as lectins, protease inhibitors, and alkaloid compounds to deter herbivores from consuming their storage roots. Thermal energy breaks down these toxic proteins, turning unpalatable and poisonous subterranean tubers into rich sources of glucose. This unlocked vast underground food stores across the African landscape, allowing Homo erectus to expand into new geographic niches previously inhospitable to earlier hominids. Cooking also neutralized lethal foodborne pathogens and toxins that previously crippled early hominids. Raw meat in the Pleistocene was crawling with parasitic worms, harmful bacteria like Salmonella and E. coli, and decay toxins that caused severe gastrointestinal infections and premature mortality. Thermal energy effectively sterilized the food supply, drastically lowering infant mortality and extending adult lifespan. By eliminating internal parasite loads and reducing gut inflammation, early humans conserved even more metabolic energy, transforming survival from a desperate daily gamble into a predictable biological routine. Biological anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer populations like the Hadza in Tanzania or the San in the Kalahari have noted that even with modern foraging knowledge, living on unrefined raw foods alone in the wild is virtually impossible for humans. Raw food diets in modern urban settings inevitably lead to significant weight loss, amenorrhea in women, and chronic energy deficiency unless supported by high-powered blenders and imported calorie-dense produce. Our species has become obligate cooks, We are biologically dependent on cooked food to maintain normal body mass and organ function. In 1995, biological anthropologists Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler published a landmark evolutionary theory known as the expensive tissue hypothesis. To grasp the brilliant horror of this theory, you must understand how your body allocates its daily energy budget. Your brain is a metabolic glutton. It accounts for only 2% of your total body weight. Yet it consumes a staggering 20 to 25% of your total resting energy. Gram for gram, brain tissue is one of the most metabolically expensive organs in existence. However, early humans evolved a massive, energy-hungry brain without increasing their overall basal metabolic rate. How was this biologically possible? You cannot break the fundamental laws of thermodynamics. If one expensive organ grows, another expensive organ must shrink to balance the energy budget. Aiello and Wheeler discovered that the organ sacrificed on the altar of human intelligence was the digestive tract. The stomach, small intestine, and large intestine are extremely expensive to maintain. They require continuous blood flow, constant cellular repair, and massive enzyme production. Before cooking, early hominids required a massive, elongated intestinal tract to ferment raw, fibrous plant matter and process raw meat. But once Homo erectus began eating cooked, pre-digested food, that massive digestive machinery became completely redundant. Over evolutionary time, the human gut shrank by nearly 30%. The massive metabolic energy that was previously wasted on maintaining a heavy, sluggish digestive system was suddenly liberated. That liberated energy was redirected straight upward into the skull, fueling an unprecedented exponential explosion in brain volume. The brain expanded from 400 cubic centimeters in early hominids to over 1,200 cubic centimeters in Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. We did not get smart and then figure out how to cook. We cooked, shrank our organs, and unlocked the energy required to become intelligent. Fossil evidence from KNM-WT15000, famously known as Turkana, a nearly complete Homo erectus skeleton dating back 1.5 million years, provides striking skeletal proof of this metabolic shift. Unlike earlier Australopithecines with broad, flaring rib cages designed to house enormous gut organ mass, Turkana possessed a narrow, modern, human-like barrel torso. If you ever wondered why humans have a relatively flat stomach compared to a gorilla, you can thank fire. The reduction in gut size flattened our midsection and transformed our posture. This reduction in digestive organ mass also unlocked unprecedented physical stamina. With a lighter torso and a streamlined digestive tract, early hominids could run long distances across the scorching African savanna without overheating or collapsing from sheer physical exhaustion. Combined with our unique ability to sweat, cooked calories transformed Homo erectus into the ultimate persistence hunter. We did not need sharp claws or massive canine teeth to capture prey. We simply outchased megafauna until they collapsed from thermal fatigue, using our thermally powered brains and athletic endurance to dominate the Pleistocene landscape. Furthermore, the control of fire fundamentally changed human sleeping patterns and nocturnal safety. Primate ancestors spent their nights in tree nests to escape ground predators, a practice that restricted deep REM sleep and limited memory consolidation. Once fire created a protective barrier on the cave floor, early hominids could sleep soundly on the ground, allowing for longer, deeper REM sleep cycles. This enhancement in sleep quality accelerated neural plasticity, memory integration, and cognitive development, working synergistically with cooked calories to expand human intellectual capacity. The reduction of masticatory apparatus also liberated human vocal anatomy. Massive jaw muscles and thick jawbones constrained the movement of the hyoid bone and larynx. As the chewing complex shrank and facial architecture flattened, the larynx descended in the throat, creating a flexible vocal tract capable of producing a wide range of articulate speech sounds. In a very real sense, cooking did not just feed our brains, it opened our throats and gave birth to complex spoken language. The transition to cooked food also transformed the human gut microbiome. Raw plant fiber requires complex microbial fermentation in an enlarged cecum and colon, producing short-chain fatty acids. When early hominids shifted to thermal food processing, cooked starches and proteins were absorbed much earlier in the small intestine. This shifted the composition of intestinal microflora, favoring bacterial strains that thrive on simple carbohydrates and reducing energy-consuming fermentation processes in the hindgut. From a bioenergetic perspective, cooking represents the first true technological leverage in human history. By applying heat energy from burning wood, early humans multiplied the net energy yield of their foraging efforts without increasing physical exertion. A single hour spent gathering firewood and roasting a subterranean root yielded exponentially more net usable metabolic calories than 8 hours spent chewing that same root raw. This massive return on energy investment provided the foundational economic surplus that made all human culture possible. But the hearth was never just a kitchen. It was the birth site of psychological manipulation and social hierarchy. When early humans gathered around the fire at night, they were not just warming their hands, they were confronting a terrifying new power dynamic. Fire required constant maintenance, strategic fuel gathering, and active protection. For the very first time in hominid history, food was concentrated in a single, fixed physical location, the fire pit. In the raw wilderness, food was dispersed. Every individual gathered or scavenged for themselves. But cooked food belonged to whoever controlled the fire. The individuals who controlled the hearth suddenly held ultimate leverage over the survival of the tribe. If you were injured, elderly, or outcast from the circle, you were denied access to cooked calories. If you were cast out into the freezing dark away from the glowing embers, your chances of surviving the night dropped to 0. The fire pit became a biological pressure cooker for human behavior. The fire pit created the very first division of labor, but it also birthed the first systemic exclusion. Those who sat closest to the flame dictated the rules, shaping the primitive origins of social status, political alliance, and psychological dominance. The fire pit did not just cook meat, it cooked human psychology, forging the mechanisms of in-group loyalty and out-group hostility that still govern human politics today. The flame became a symbol of belonging, and the cold darkness beyond became the ultimate punishment for disobedience. Fast forward 2 million years, and the ancient biological machinery forged around that primitive campfire is being weaponized against you every single day. Your brain is still hardwired to believe that highly processed, calorie-dense cooked food is an ultra-rare survival miracle. When your Pleistocene ancestors encountered cooked fat and caramelized carbohydrates, their brains flooded with dopamine to ensure they ate as much as humanly possible before the fire went out. Modern food corporations understand this evolutionary vulnerability with terrifying precision. They design ultra-processed foods that combine refined sugars, industrial oils, and artificial flavor enhancers specifically engineered to hit the hyper-palatable bliss point. We have outsourced digestion to industrial processing plants that pre-digest food to such a degree that our bodies expend virtually zero energy breaking it down. Refined starches and seed oils require no metabolic effort, causing rapid blood glucose spikes followed by precipitous insulin surges that trigger perpetual hunger. When you consume these laboratory-crafted foods, you are triggering the exact same evolutionary dopamine surge that saved your ancestors from starvation in the Ice Age. Today, this evolutionary programming is ruthlessly exploited by modern food engineering. Industrial processing plants have taken over the role of fire, pre-digesting food to such an extreme degree that your body expends virtually zero energy digesting refined starches and oils. This creates a dangerous biological optical illusion. Your digestive tract absorbs calories at record speed, spiking blood sugar while failing to trigger stretch receptors in the stomach. Your Pleistocene brain assumes a famine is coming and commands you to keep eating, leaving modern humans trapped in a constant cycle of overconsumption. This evolutionary mismatch extends far beyond bodily health into our social lives. Just as early hominids huddled around the fire to form tight-knit tribes while vilifying outgroups, modern humans gather around digital hearths, such as social media feeds and algorithm-driven echo chambers, that exploit the exact same primitive neurological triggers. Algorithms amplify outrage, group polarization, and tribal hostility because our brains react to digital threat signals in the same way our ancestors reacted to predators lurking outside the firelight. 2 million years ago, a spark in the dark cave saved our ancestors from extinction. It freed us from the endless cycle of chewing raw meat, shrank our digestive organs, and gave us the cognitive power to build empires, launch rockets, and decipher the secrets of the cosmos. Thermal energy made us human, turning a vulnerable ape into the undisputed master of the biosphere. However, as you look around at our modern world of artificial lights, hyper-processed diets, and screen-filled nights, you have to ask yourself an unsettling question. Are we still the masters of the fire we created, or has the fire finally consumed us? When you sit down for your next meal, remember that every bite you take is a reminder of a 2 million-year-old evolutionary contract signed in blood, ash, and hunger. The spark that ignited human intelligence remains an eternal flame, burning within our biology and driving our search for meaning in an uncertain universe. This evolutionary mismatch reminds us that our bodies are walking museum pieces of Pleistocene adaptation. Every craving for caramelized sugar, every social media outrage spiral, and every campfire gathering traces back to the thermal revolution that forged our species. Recognizing these deep evolutionary roots gives us the power to reclaim our health, navigating the modern world with greater wisdom and self-awareness. Ultimately, the story of human evolution is the story of how a vulnerable primate transformed fire into intelligence, culture, and civilization. By understanding the metabolic contracts signed by our ancestors, we gain a deeper appreciation for the remarkable journey that brought us here today. Every meal remains a celebration of this ancient victory over hunger and cold, uniting us with the first humans who gathered around the glowing hearth.